All right, everyone. Welcome to the Tonto's Demise Week 7 recap. And this was a difficult week. After a difficult week, it just keeps on piling up. At least for me, to the pleasure of all of you, I'm almost certain. Of course, and it happened Thursday, so I had to stew on it for a couple extra days there. Fortunately, of course, I assume you know that I'm talking about Patrick Mahomes, but who knows how long he's going to be out. He's not gone for the year, but I really needed him this week to at least make it through the first half of that game, and he did not do it. So we'll see what happens. Said he's not going to be out. He's not out for the year. He's probably just out for a couple weeks, maybe till they're bye. That would be pretty rough for me. But yeah, it puts me in a difficult spot. And yeah, in times where these past 2 weeks I really needed to get a win, couldn't quite make it. And this is probably going to be my season. I think has been decided in these last 2 weeks here, where I lost by 0.2, and now I lost with Mahomes going out. They're 2 wins that I need. It's going to be a difficult time going forward. I think I've said before, and I know Detling likes to point out that, well, everybody needs a win every week, and they want one, but for sure now, I do not see myself being able to get to 7 this year unless things really shake up and pan out my way. But I just don't see it happening. It's been too much, I think too many injuries to overcome this year. Just not too much you can do about that. Of course, everybody's had to deal with injuries. Maybe not quite as many people as I've had to go through this year. It's been almost a dozen players, either in and out from week to week, getting hurt, juggling them on the roster there between the IR and the roster, trying to decide who to keep, who to cut, trying to just to get through putting up the best possible roster each and every week. Some of you have been fortunate enough to pretty much have your lineup be the same, pretty much week in and week out. There were a couple other injuries this week that happened that might affect things going down the road. So anything can happen, of course, week to week. I can't be too upset. Everybody has a year, I think, at some point where their team is just gutted by injuries, and there's really very little you can do about it. Again, so I'm not the only one. A couple of other people. There's been injuries all season long. A lot of people have had to juggle some stuff, but some interesting ones this week also too. Not really no season-long injuries, but some significant ones that probably going to have an effect here as we make the march towards the playoffs here. A lot of teams in the middle here trying to make a push for the playoffs. Just taking a quick look at the standings here. The difference between 3rd place and 9th place right now is only 1 game. So the people who are 3 and 4 are just behind a whole bunch of people who are 4 and 3. So you're definitely not out of it yet. Really, no one is out of it. But then again, we're going into week 8. So that only leaves, 6 weeks left? It said Yinzer Jags and the Isotopes are 3 and 4. That means to get to 7, you got to win 4 out of 6, which you haven't won 4 out of 7 so far yet. Disco, Darkwing, Jut, and Possum Magic. They need to go 5-1 down the stretch. Not easy to certainly not easy to do when that's how many games you need to win as many games as you've already lost. Perhaps a 6-7 will make it this year. It's always a possibility. However, that's not something you want to be banking on at this point in the season. A 6-7 team is going to make the playoffs. Yeah, so that's enough about me getting angry about losing Patrick Mahomes for a little while. And we're all well aware of how injuries have been plaguing this, seems like really plaguing this season more than seasons past, at least. Maybe I'm just noticing it more this year because it's been kicking my ass. But yeah, it's been a pretty tough season. Just trying to hold on. Hope your players make it and your team can just all you said get to the playoffs without losing any of the significant pieces of your team. All right. That all being said, let's get into the matchups from Week 7. And as always, we start with the defending champion, Yinzer Jags, who was going up against the Springfield Isotopes. And this one came down to a couple guys on Monday night. But the Isotopes were unable to get past Yinzer Jags. The final score here, 146.3 to 140 exactly. Let's take a look at Yinzer Jags. He had Kyler Murray, only 22 points there. Hopkins, Woods, and Robbie Anderson. You traded away. Who did you trade away? I can't even remember who the guy is now. I gotta look at Gag's team. Why am I forgetting? Keenan Allen. That's right. You traded away Keenan Allen. My bad for forgetting that. So you had Robbie Anderson going against the Jets, for the Jets going against the Patriots this week. Hopkins 25.5, Woods 13.5, and Robbie Anderson only 2 points there. Pretty much probably what you were expecting from him, playing against the Patriots and getting shut down by Gilmore. And Sam Darnold having one of the worst games I think I've ever seen a professional quarterback play. And we've seen guys like Curtis Painter and things like Fitzpatrick has had some pretty impressive ones. Matt Schaub back in the day, putting up some stinkers. But yeah, that was for a guy who's a franchise quarterback. That was a pretty pitiful performance. Anyway, fortunately for you, it didn't cost you a victory here. You still were able to pull it out. Running backs, Devontae Freeman and James White, 4.5 and 13. Kittle, only 6.5 or so. Kelsey, only 10.5. Justin Tucker, your kicker, about 10 points or so. And then the Jacksonville Jaguars defense, perhaps the difference maker here, as they had a pick six, which I think was one of the ugliest, most ridiculous passes attempts that I've ever seen Andy Dalton make. I think that's what I just saw the clip very briefly, I think in a highlight there, that he just was getting tackled and he just threw up a little 5-yard duck right into the hands of a defender and he ran it right back for a touchdown. So that was different. That was one of the difference makers in this matchup. Also, of course, as we know, Jacksonville defense earlier in the season tried to make a waiver claim for them. I don't know if I said this already before, but I was going back and forth between bids of $19 and $16, $19, $16, $19, $16, going back and forth. And at the last minute, changed it to 16, I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure no one else, like the bids have been pretty low. I don't think anyone else is going to swoop in and bid anything higher than that. Detling's already got 4 defenses on his team. He's not going to swoop in. And, of course, I wake up the next day to find that he somehow he had bid 17 and outbid me by $1. Perhaps that is one of the turning points of my season here, not getting the Jacksonville Jaguars defense, making that one mistake, not going out and getting them, paying to get them when I wanted them. So I believe, preach that if you want a player off the waiver wire, make a bid that pretty much guarantees you're gonna get them. You don't have to bet, or you don't have to. Why am I saying you don't have to bet? You don't have to bid $120 or some of the crazy stuff that Tree did earlier in the year. Gags likes to do $100 bid for, I think, Seattle defense last week. There's no need to go quite that high usually, but if you want a guy, you should make a bid that you feel pretty confident that you're going to get him. Trust your instincts, and if that's the guy that you want, you should do everything that you can to go out and get him. Maybe even if you end up being wrong, at least you got the guy that you wanted, and he just didn't pan out the way that you thought it would be. Nothing wrong with making those mistakes and accepting mistakes and learning from them and being able to move on. But enough preaching there. Anyway, Jacksonville's defense looks like Yahoo says 26. I'm going to guess the actual score was about 38 based on what your total is bumped up to there. But it was enough to get past the Isotopes this week. Of course, Patrick Mahomes scored 18 points in pretty much a little over one quarter of play. Only a couple points less than Kyler Murray put up in the entire game this week. And then, of course, as you know, he went out to injury. Tyreek Hill actually did catch a touchdown from Matt Moore. He went for 16.5. Julian Edelman's 13.5. Gallup 6.5. Aaron Jones 18.5. Melvin Gordon 9 points. Knox at the tight end, since Herndon's still not back, 4.2. Tariq Cohen 12 points. Kicker Zane Gonzalez about 11 points. And then the New Orleans Saints defense, Yahoo says 19. I believe the total was closer to 30 or so, 31, something like that, based on the point difference there. But yeah, so it actually came down on Monday night to Robbie Anderson and James White versus Edelman. Yinzer Jags had about a 5-point margin, and Edelman and James White pretty much scored about the same, about a half-point difference there in favor of Edelman. So he said Yinzer Jags had about that 5-point cushion. Robbie Anderson was able to get 2 points to end up making it, moving that 5-point cushion to end up being 6 points there. Of course, another big factor here in this matchup probably was Melvin Gordon getting 2 carries at the end of that game from the goal line. At first, he was given a touchdown, but then they said no, he was down before the goal. And then, of course, his second carry, he fumbled it away and costing the Chargers the game there. Losing that fumble instead of getting the touchdown, that's an 8-point swing right there. And that would have changed the outcome of this matchup. So all sorts of things that could have happened differently in this one. But that's just the way it goes. That's football, and such is life. And Yinzer Jags, with this win, he moves up to 3-4, while the Isotopes fall to 3-4. And the Yinzer Jags are in 8th place. Isotopes are in 9th place. Next up, we have Hillbillies on PCP going up against 10 XL entries. Speaking of things that could go different this year, Hillbillies on PCP gets this victory, making him 5-2, which means he is actually still 1 point here, I think half a point there, from being undefeated at this point in the season, instead of 5-2. So little things that could have gone differently. Said Brian could be 7-0 right now. Interesting if that would have happened, but such is football. Things didn't go quite your way, and you'd be sitting pretty in a good position. Did I just say sitting pretty? That might be the dumbest thing I've ever said in my life. Anyway, let's get to it. Hillbillies on PCP gets the win. Final score 168.15 to 149.3. This one, let's see, Monday night. Let's see, 10 XL entries had Sony Michel going. The difference going into this matchup looks like about 40. It was about 42 points for Hillbillies on PCP. And Sony Michel, he actually scored 3 touchdowns. He got you about halfway there, but not quite enough to do it. Even though, of course, Hillbillies on PCP, not too many times this year he's put up a beatable score, but this week was one of them with, of course, McCaffrey being on his bye, but you were unable to take advantage there. But for Hillbillies, he had Kirk Cousins in the lineup again, going for almost 60 points. He has been on fire ever since they called him out and said that they need to start passing the ball more. They're running it too much. Still kind of surprised. The Vikings offense has been carrying Brian for a while here because your 3 receivers, Jeffrey, what's his name? Alden Tate for the Bengals and Emmanuel Sanders. Those guys got you 5.5, 9.5, and 11 respectively. You're looking for more. Definitely, I'd say from your receivers there. Fortunately for you, again, Redskins are not the Redskins. The Vikings offense. Dalvin Cook, he got you 31 points. So over 90 points from Kirk Cousins and Dalvin Cook. Kind of strange the way that this year, usually you want to avoid a quarterback running back combination. I don't think Dalvin Cook, unless the running back is a pass catcher, heavy on the pass catching, like McCaffrey, but Dalvin Cook isn't really one of those guys, but he's just been putting up points, yards, and touchdowns like crazy, no matter who they play this year. All right, then we got Derrick Henry. Another touchdown for him, almost 100 yards, about 17.5 points there. Austin Hooper, kind of a quiet game for him. I think he got a touchdown late in the game to save your week from him there, ending up with 14.5 points. Galladay in the flex, since no McCaffrey, you had to start 4 receivers this week. He only got you 3 points. Your kicker, Lutz from New Orleans, about 9 points or so. And then the Houston Texans defense, they lost the game. Let's see. Yahoo says 4. It must have been maybe 7 based on the point difference there between what Yahoo says and your actual score there. So it was enough to get you past 10 XL entries this week. Let's take a look at him. He had Deshaun Watson go for 42.5. Michael Thomas, 22. Perhaps a difference maker here in it said final score was a 19-point difference. Adam Thielen, he went out, I believe, in the first quarter of this game. He caught a touchdown, but then went out with a hamstring injury. And then you also had Will Fuller going out with a hamstring injury, much more severe, I think, than Thielen's, but he's going to be out for a while. He only got you 1.5 points before going out. So 9.5 for Thielen, 1.5 for Fuller. I think, say you need 19 extra points. Both of those guys went out pretty early in that game. If you consider the possibility of, say, a reasonable possibility of Fuller getting, 10 or 12 points and Thielen having a couple more catches than just his one first quarter touchdown catch, that could have made a difference here in that matchup and turned it the other way here. Although, this is the week that we've all been waiting for, the one where Will Fuller suffers an injury after going crazy for the past couple weeks. Well, the one, week 5 when he really blew up for a good week there. Your Watson to Fuller connection has been paying good dividends here for you so far this year. But as we all know, and I think it's mentioned in, I'm sure I've mentioned it before. I'm pretty sure it was mentioned in the podcast that it's only a matter of time every year until Will Fuller suffers some sort of injury. I think he's always on Jay's team. He never gives up hope on him. And he always lets you down at some point in the season. So I believe he's out for a while, as he usually is. And hamstring injuries, those can be tricky. They can linger for a while. So we'll have to wait and see what happens here with you. You taking a look at Jay's bench here. Said you have Golden Tate in the flex. You can move him up to one of your wide receivers because the only other wide receiver on your roster is Deshaun Jackson, and he hasn't played in several weeks. Maybe he'll be coming back soon, and you can get some use out of him there. I assume you'll be plugging James Conner into your flex, or perhaps moving Sony Michel or Duke Johnson down there into your flex spot. So we'll see. You've definitely got some options there, but losing both possibly Thielen and Fuller this week. So if both of those guys are out, and assuming Deshaun Jackson is out again, your only available wide receivers will be Michael Thomas and Golden Tate. So you might have to do some lineup shuffling, some roster shuffling here in these next few days there for Jay. But anyway, let's finish it going down his roster here. I said Watson, 42.5, Michael Thomas, 22, Thielen, 9.5, Fuller, 1.5, Sony Michel, 22.5, Duke Johnson, 7.5, Jimmy Graham, who somehow, I think Jimmy Graham is always on Jay's team too for the past few years, ever since he left New Orleans. Seems like he's always on Jay's team for whatever reason. I think he's been a keeper a couple times, maybe once or twice, but somehow he's always on Jay's team. Much like Will Fuller. Jimmy Graham, 16.5. Golden Tate in your flex, 14. Mason Crosby, 6. And then the Chicago Bears defense, they had a long touchdown return, kickoff return from Patterson there. But that was pretty much the only bright spot for the Chicago defense there, because your score did not have to be adjusted at all. What Yahoo says is what you got, because you had no field goals, and the 7 points from Chicago defense was correct there. So at least thank you for not making me have to do any adjustments on your score there. But anyway, with this win, Hillbillies on PCP, he moves up to 5-2. He is in second place, while 10 XL entries, he falls to 4-3, and he is in 6th place. Next up, we got Shawshank Athletics versus Disco. And Disco coming up and taking this one. Final score here, 194.1 to 165.45. And this is despite Disco leaving Aaron Rodgers 81 points. He had a long touchdown there. 81 points from Rodgers, leaving that on the bench, and 43 points from Marvin Jones being left on the bench in favor of Darius Slayton from the Giants. Okay. Anyway, can't complain too much there, I think, Disco, because Jacoby Brissett ended up going for just under 60 points for you. Kind of surprised there. His best performance of the year so far. Then you had Cooper Kupp, John Brown, and again Slayton. Kupp goes for 11, Brown goes for 19, Slayton goes for 4.8. Your running backs, Mixon and Montgomery, 7.5 for Mixon, just under 2 for Montgomery. Can't quite figure out what the Chicago Bears are doing with their running game this year. Pretty much their offense in general. But really surprising, especially after the strong preseason that David Montgomery had. It's like they don't want to give him the ball or run the ball like they should. It's just a really surprising performance. Like his point totals have been around 9 or 10 pretty much every week. This was by far his worst game of the season, but really surprised how minimal an amount of usage Montgomery has been getting so far this season. Waller the baller, he went crazy this week. He had 2 touchdowns, 7 catches for 126 yards, 31.5 points. Good game for him. Probably his highest point total of the year. Yes. By far his highest point total of the year. He's had some scores in the teens. He had a 27-pointer early on. But yeah, good score for him this week. So you got Brissett's highest score of the year this week. You got, John Brown, not his highest score of the year, but pretty close. And then Waller's highest score of the year. In the flex, Le'Veon, only 8.5. Prater, your kicker, a little over 7. And then probably the highest score for your defense there this year. San Francisco, they were playing in the storm, in Washington there, raining. Everybody slipping and sliding around in that one. Yahoo says 21, but the actual score, I believe, was doubled that. I want to say 42. So that jumped you up to about, from 172 to 194 there. So more than enough to get past Shawshank Athletics this week, as he had Russell Wilson only go for 35.5 points. Tough game for them against Baltimore there. Baltimore, whose defense is your defense, and you did not play them didn't want to put your defense against your quarterback. You went with the Giants defense there instead. Probably didn't make the a difference here, although, I don't know. You lost by almost 29 points there. I believe the Giants' actual score was 14. I did not figure out what Baltimore's actual score would be if you had played them. Yahoo says 25. I'm going to guess it was closer to 40, maybe. So if you add that 25 points there, approximately, I'm just guessing here, that still wouldn't, that gets you up to about 190. I honestly didn't figure out what Baltimore's score would have been. And so unfortunately, I'm just speculating here. Maybe I'm wrong, but I'm going to guess that if you had started the Ravens defense, even though they did pretty well, it looks like they scored 2 touchdowns, I think you still would have lost this matchup. So I'll have to go back and figure that out. Maybe post an update somewhere on the Line app or something like that. Anyway, said Wilson going for 35.5. Your receivers, Tyler Boyd, Jamison Crowder, and Allen Robinson. 8.5, 6.5, and then 24.7 for Robinson. Running backs this week, Fournette and Zeke. 19.5, 29.7 for Zeke. Andrews, your tight end, only 6 points there. Amari Cooper ended up playing this week, did pretty good. 15.5 points there, no touchdowns though. Your kicker, Bryant, looks like about 6 or so. And then, of course, mentioned already, the Giants defense. I believe the score on Yahoo was correct with 14 there. So, okay. Let's take a look here at your score. Making sure. Yeah, we're all good there. So, with that win, Disco saves perhaps his season. Instead of dropping to 1-6, he moves up to 2-5. He's in 10th place, while Shawshank Athletics, he drops to 4-3, but he is still up there in 4th place. Next, we've got From Gags to Riches going up against the Dub C Hooligans. And Dub C comes from behind on Monday night. The difference was about 40 points or so between Gags and Dub C there. And he had Philip Dorsett and the Patriots defense. Patriots defense gets a shutout. I believe the actual point total was 60. Another 60-point game for them. Just ridiculous this year. But I believe things are going to start getting harder according to their schedule. So hopefully, Kevin, I'm sure you've been enjoying the ride so far. They play, let's see, the Patriots have coming up Cleveland, Baltimore, Philadelphia, Dallas, Houston, Kansas City. So tougher matchups coming up, unless they somehow just make all of those teams look pitiful. We'll see how things go for you there the rest of the season. I'm sure you've been enjoying the ride here, but we'll see how much longer it lasts. I feel like we've been saying that for a couple weeks, though, and things are still going on just fine there. But anyway, said it was a 40-point margin of difference there for what you needed to get past Gags, and said Patriots defense got well beyond that just by themselves here. Take a look at the rest of Dub C. He had Lamar Jackson go for 36.5. Larry Fitzgerald, only one catch for 12 yards. Tyler Lockett, 16.5. Chark, 10.5. Mark Ingram, 6.5. Royce Freeman, 16.5. Zach Ertz, 5.8. Philip Dorsett, 13.6. He had an early touchdown in that game. Elliott, your kicker, looks like about 4 points or so. And then again, the Patriots defense going for another 60 points this week. Enough to get past Gags to riches. Let's take a look at his team. He had Phillip Rivers go for 51.5. Julio, Keenan Allen, and A.J. Brown in this week, thanks to some bye week problems and some injury problems there for you. Take a look here. Julio, 15.3. Keenan Allen, 10.1. A.J. Brown, 12.2, I should say. Gurley, 12.5. LaShawn McCoy, 9.5. Your only tight end now, since you traded away Kelsey, I think this is the guy you're going to be rolling with. I don't think he's had his bye week yet, but this is basically it. Said you traded away Kelsey. There's slim pickings on the waiver wire, but your current tight end is Akins from the Texans here. He got you 3.5 points. Breida in the flex there, only 4.5 points. You left Latavius Murray on the bench this week, even though Kamara was out. Not a move I think I would have made, having seen, I think I already mentioned it, Josh Jacobs from the Raiders having a huge game against them. The Bears defense there. I think the mystique about the Bears defense, that maybe how good they were last year, has not quite carried over to this year. I don't think I would have been scared to play Latavius Murray against the Bears defense this week, but that's the choice you made. I mean, you had a tough choice there. Of course, as we know, McCoy was Thursday night, so he was locked into one of those spots. Do you bench Gurley? No, probably not. Or Breida in a game against the Redskins. If I don't know about the weather. If you had known the weather report before that game, I probably would have definitely switched Breida out for Murray there. Let's see. Assuming you had put in Murray for Breida, the difference there is about 30 points, and you still would have lost this matchup. So it really doesn't matter. Anyway, at the end of the day, it didn't matter, but it would have been a 5-point difference, maybe less than that here. So, yeah, where did we stop? We got to Breida. Zuerlein, your kicker, he got about 13 points or so. And then the Seattle defense, who was your defense before you traded them away? Buffalo, I think, against Miami. Yeah, they were one of the teams that you traded away, and you picked up said Seattle defense. Mentioned that before. You bid the $100 to pick them up, and I assume are going to plan on playing them most of the way for the rest of the season. They let you down, though, this week. They only got, Yahoo must have been right, because Yahoo says 7, and your point total barely changed there. So, yeah, with this win, both of you guys are now 4-3. Dub C moving up to 4-3. Gags to Riches moving down to 4-3. Although Gags gets the last laugh because he is in 3rd place, while the Hooligans are in 5th place. Alright, then we've got Darkwing Jut going against DJs for Everybody, formerly in the Juju hole, but Juju is no longer on in the Juju hole. He's now got David Johnson, who took it in the Juju, gave it to you in the Juju hole this week. Let's see, Darkwing Jut, who is panicking and fully expecting to lose this week. And just the fact that you won is impressive, because I am looking at your roster, and I am seeing almost all single digit scores here. This one, wow, you got carried by your buns this week. Darkwing Jut there said he threw out a bunch of fab money. He had all his wide receivers were on bye this week. Mike Evans, DJ Moore, and Beckham Jr. All 3 of those guys were on bye this week. Justin was had been penciling this week up as a loss for several weeks now. But that any given Sunday, I guess, that's the way football goes. Saying that many times here this week. But the final score, Darkwing Jut 157.3 to DJs for Everybody 129.15. Said Darkwing Jut, his buns pretty much carried him through this game. Goff, instead of going for 15 or so, like he did last week, he went for, instead of 15, he got you 50. And then the Rams defense turned things around. Yahoo says 26. The actual score must have been closer to 50, based on what the point difference here is. But as for the rest of Darkwing Jut, he had Valdez-Scantling actually go for 24 points, mostly thanks to his 75-yard touchdown pass. He only had 2 catches, but he still managed to get you to over 21 points there. And then you picked up off of waivers Pettis from San Francisco. He got you 0. Humphreys from Tennessee, he got you 8. Carlos Hyde said you probably could have just started no wide receivers this week, except Valdez-Scantling, and not spent all that fab money and just left those spots empty, and you still would have won this week. Hyde and Tevin Coleman, your running backs, 3.5 from Hyde, 8 from Coleman. Evan Engram, only 1.5 points there. You're probably begging to put Eli back in, because that's when Evan Engram was really going crazy. Said to get with catches there. Eli dumping off those short passes to Evan Engram and Saquon Barkley there. And then perhaps a difference maker here in the future for Darkwing Jut, as Kerryon Johnson. I see he is now listed as being on IR. He had a knee injury. He only got you 2.5 points there. I believe the Lions are hoping he comes back at some point this season. So not sure how severe that injury is, but I think he might have already had knee surgery there. I don't think it was anything. It wasn't torn ACL or anything like that, but it's significant enough that it looks like he's going to be out for a while there. But I think you can probably start 4 wide receivers going here. You've got Singletary, though, kind of on the bench there. He's waiting to get some playing time there. But I think if you bring those 3 wide receivers back into your lineup there, maybe move one of them into the flex and keep starting MVS, you might be all right here as we move on down the road. Your kicker, Mayer from the Cowboys. Once again, we had to tack on extra points here for him because Yahoo doesn't account for 60-yard field goals. He kicked a 62 or 63 yarder this week. Yahoo says 13, but I believe the total ended up being closer to 15 thanks to that those long kicks there. And again, the Rams defense went for about 50 or so, 45-ish, somewhere in that range there. But it was enough to get past DJs for everybody. He had Tom Brady left to go on Monday night. And just taking a look at my notes here, looks like you needed about 73 points from Tom Brady. Not out of the question. 70, that's always it's possible. It's not plausible or likely, but it is possible. Unfortunately, he went for 44.5 of those 70-some points that you needed this week. It's actually kind of funny looking at your lineup here. Much like Darkwing Jet, you had Diggs. You had your quarterback go for about 45-ish, and your first wide receiver here going for 21.2, which is pretty much the same score that Scantling got, although MVS did have that 3-point bonus there. Your other wide receivers, Hardman and Geronimo Allison, 10.8, 7.3. Saquon Barkley came back and got you 17 points. But then David Johnson said stuck it in your juju hole here this week as he was active. Maybe it was the Cardinals coach there who stuck it in the juju hole and twisted it for you. As they said, Johnson was going to be active. He was going to be playing. But he did nothing here. He got you 2 yards. Barely saw the field, I guess. So perhaps his injury is more significant than we've been led to believe here. Let's see. But I guess, you wanted more, but I guess playing the Cardinals, obviously, as we know, didn't really need David Johnson to be in there, risking further injury, as Chase Edmonds more than carried the load there, going for a couple touchdowns and a pretty big score from him, which I believe we'll get to in the next matchup here. But again, Johnson only 0.2. Your tight end, Delaney Walker, 0. Excuse me. On the flex, Philip Lindsay, only 4.2. Your kicker was the Giants, Rosas. Looks like about 2. And then you acquired the Buffalo Bills defense in that trade with Gags there. They had a touchdown, a couple turnovers there. Yahoo says 16. Based on that, everything here, though, it must have been about 20 or so. 2021, something like that, maybe 22. Kind of expected a little bit more from them against Miami there. But, also a lot of single-digit scores here for a lot of your players, on both sides in this matchup here. But, bigger scores from the Rams defense, and the Rams quarterback gets Darkwing Jet the victory this week. He moves up to 2-5. He is still, though, down in 11th place. While DJs for everybody, he drops to 4-3, and he is now in 7th place. I think, didn't DJs for everybody, he started 3-0. And he's been on the skids here, dropping it down to only 4-3 there. So we'll see. Be interesting to see how he can hold up for the rest of the season going forward there. All right, the final matchup, we had Mighty Midgets going up against Possum Magic, a sort of seemingly David versus Goliath matchup this week based on how this season has been going there. But once again, unfortunately for Possum Magic, once again gets a loss, although you did make this one definitely interesting, and your team performed a little bit better than a lot of people probably expected you to. But yeah, it just wasn't enough to get past Mighty Midgets. Some solid scores up and down his lineup, even though, let's just get into it. The final score here was 172.65 to 159.3. For Mighty Midgets, he had Matt Ryan go down to injury there, only at some point in the game. I think it was. I don't think it was early. I think it was later in the game. Not exactly certain there, but he had ended up with only 19 points. Your wide receivers: Cortland Sutton, Calvin Ridley, and T.Y. Hilton, 14.7, 7, and 19.5 respectively. Running backs: Carson and Eckler, 10.5 for Carson, but Eckler having another big game. Receiving wise, he's basically another wide receiver in there for you. 25.5 points from him. The rumors of Eckler's demise after the return of Melvin Gordon were obviously grossly exaggerated, as he has been nonstop production pretty much all year long, except for last week, a little blip on his on the radar there. But yeah, he's been in the 20s there, if not higher, pretty much every week of the season for you. Just taking a quick look here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Not bad for a 6th round pick there on Eckler. And Witten, your tight end, 7.3. And mentioned this before, you are the one who picked up Chase Edmonds. I believe you put a pretty high bid on him a week or two ago, and he went for over 100 yards and 3 touchdowns this week. His final score was 38, probably the big difference maker in this matchup. Butker went for about 12 or so. Tennessee Titans defense got lucky at the end of that game and ended up winning a game they probably should have tied, or at least have gone to overtime and perhaps lost there at the end. Yahoo says 10. I don't think you had any long touchdown bonuses there, so their actual score was somewhere closer to 20, something like that, maybe 19 for the Titans defense there. Despite only less than 20 from Matt Ryan, you were still able to get a win here against Possum Magic. Let's take a look at his lineup. He had Josh Allen go for 39.5. Wide receivers D.D. Westbrook, Terry McLaurin, and Cole Beasley. Westbrook 17.7, McLaurin only 2.1, and Beasley 10.5. Running backs Josh Jacobs and Marlon Mack. Jacobs, another game over 100 yards. He had 19.5 points there. Mack, 8.5 points. Hunter Henry, after his big return last week, when he went for 30, he had no touchdowns. He did half of that this week, 15.7. In the flex, Jordan Howard, 7.5 points there. Kicker Lambo from Jacksonville, Yahoo says 10. Looks like he had several field goals, so his score was actually probably closer to 11, 11.5. And then the Colts defense, been a pretty good draft and play this year. They've been pretty consistently good. Looks like they had a safety, they had a couple turnovers. Yahoo says 17. Gonna guess the actual total was probably about 27 based on the difference there here. So a couple pretty good, decent scores there for you. Possum. Allen getting 40, 30 points or so from the Colts. 20 from Jacobs there, but yeah, a couple single-digit scores there. Enough to, not quite be able to get past. Said you definitely had a chance this week with Matt Ryan, but Chase Edmonds and Eckler, difference makers here, going for 25 and 38 respectively there. So with this win, Mighty Midgets, he moves up to 5-2. He is in first place. And Possum Magic, he is at the other end of the spectrum. He drops down to 2-5, and unfortunately, he is in 12th place. All right, those are all the matchups for Week 7. Don't think I mentioned it so far. Didn't get a chance on the lineup because Sunday night, internet wasn't working quite right. Had to unplug my modem and the router there. Give them some time off to refresh. So right after the game, I didn't get a chance to do any point adjustments and any chat on the lineup there. But this week, the person out of the knockout pool was Yinzer Jags. Yinzer Jags is knocked out this week, which means the teams that still remain in the knockout pool are Hillbillies on PCP, Disco, Shawshank Athletics, Dub C Hooligans, and Mighty Midgets. So, yeah, those 5 teams still in the knockout pool. Hillbillies, Disco, Shawshank, Dub C, and the Midgets. So, a couple weeks here till we see who takes that one. All right, that's pretty much it for week 7. We don't take bye weeks here on the review. So hopefully there's going to be a podcast this week. We didn't have one last week. Let's take a quick peek at the week 8 matchups. Said last week we had 6 teams who were all 4-2. Of those 6 teams, only 2 of them got victories this past week. So we now have 5 teams who are 4-3, 2 teams at 3-4, 3 teams at 2-5, and then Hillbillies and Mighty Midgets up there at the top at 5-2. So really any range between 3 to 9. So perhaps Disco still in it until he gets another loss or 2. If he gets another loss or 2, him and Darkwing and Possum still in it, holding on, not out yet. Anything can happen these next few weeks, but like I said, there's only a 1 game difference here between 3rd place and 9th place. The point differentials are ridiculous between 3rd place and 9th place, being over about 250 points, 200 to 250 points there. So that might play a factor here as teams try to vie for one of those last playoff spots as we get to the end of the regular season here. So it's still anyone shaping up to be. I think Mighty Midgets and Hillbillies, we can probably easily pencil them in for 2 of the playoff spots at this point, leaving 4 spots left open. And it's going to be tricky. Like I said, DJs have been kind of sliding. 10XL Entries had some significant injuries this week. We'll see how long those linger for him. Dub C Hooligans. We'll see how long you can be carried by the Patriots defense here. Be interesting. Gags has kind of been struggling the past couple weeks, so it's still wide open, I think, for those last 4 spots. We'll see what happens as we go down the stretch. Take a quick look here at week 8. Let's see. Of those 4-3 teams, I only see one matchup where they're playing each other, which is 10XL Entries versus DJs for everybody. So one of you will definitely be dropping to 500, while one of you gets win number 5. We got Disco, who's trying to claw his way back into playoff contention. Unfortunately, this week he's going up against Mighty Midgets, the first place team, although Yahoo has you currently projected to win by about 20-some points. So he's probably going to be going without Matt Ryan this week, who is playing Seattle this week, so that's wouldn't be an easy matchup for him anyway. That should be a good matchup to watch this week. Disco versus the Midgets there. As of course, Disco trying to stay in playoff contention and not get loss number 6. Let's see, we got Yinzers versus Dub C. That should be good. Both of you said Yinzers trying to get back to 500. Dub C hoping not to fall to 500. Should be a good matchup there. Shawshank versus Darkwing. Justin's 2-5, trying to avoid getting his 6th loss as well. But he said he's getting all those wide receivers back this week. So we'll see. He'll probably give Shawshank a hard time. Be interesting to watch what happens there. And then Gags gets Possum Magic this week. We'll see if Possum can put in another solid performance when his team was, I think, left for roadkill a few weeks ago. but they've managed to claw their way back into at least putting up competitive scores here the past few weeks, though. So we'll see what happens. Said Gags' team has been kind of in a slide these past few weeks. So really anything can happen. And then, of course, finally we have Hillbillies on PCP going up against the Isotopes. And currently I am just holding it really right now. It's fingers crossed that maybe Drew Brees comes back this week, so I have a quarterback to play against you. You're currently projected to beat me by 80 points. So, yeah, it's not going to be pretty. We'll see what happens here. Might have to do some waiver wire juggling here. So at least for the quarterback position, we'll see what can happen here. Said starting to run low on those transactions here too. So having to juggle all these injuries here hasn't been easy. So we'll have to wait and see. I mean, have to make moves here, but I don't want to make too many. So we'll see what happens because in a tough spot here. I am at least. Taking a look at Hillbillies here real quick. He's got McCaffrey at San Francisco. So I kind of feel good about that. If there's anything to feel good about if you have to play McCaffrey right now, probably going up against the 49ers defense is the best case scenario for me. So, but everything else in your matchups looks pretty good. So probably going to be another disappointing week here for the Isotopes here. So anyway, those are the just a quick preview of the Week 8 matchups. We'll see how many teams can get the win number 5. If anybody gets win number 6. If anybody gets loss number 6, we'll see what happens here. And who else continues to be muddled in the middle. So, yeah. Going to be fun to watch. Well, again, we pray every week for no more significant injuries. Whoever I'm praying to, much like any week for any other time in my life, that there's no answer. Things keep happening. There's no answer to these prayers. Things keep happening. People keep getting hurt, and it sucks. Not just for me, but for everybody, because you'd love nothing more than I think to get through a season where pretty much week in and week out, everybody is playing their optimal lineup, and we're really having some pretty tight competition. Always fun to see. Although these past couple weeks, we've actually had some pretty tight competition. What week was it where it was almost all blowouts? Week 5. Yeah, it was like everyone was winning by, I think, where did I write it? I wrote it down here somewhere. Yeah, week 5, that was week 5. The average margin of victory was 80 points. 80 points. And then week 6, there was 200-point scores everywhere. Week 6, things kind of cooled off. So we had that 0.15 difference there. We had a 7-point difference. Things were a little bit closer, but yeah, again, and then here in week 7, nobody was over 200. I think that might be the first time this year that there was not a team over 200. Just taking a quick peek back to previous weeks, and yeah, this was the first week where no one went over 200. So scores have been kind of on a slide here these past few weeks, but it's making matchups. Matchups have been a lot closer. Some games coming down to Monday night there. It's tough to watch when you're involved in one of those and it comes down to a couple points. Excuse me. If not less than a point there sometimes. But much more interesting to watch these matchups when they come down to, said 5, 10, 15, things like that, closer matchups instead of like those 80-point blowouts that we had a couple weeks ago. So things have gotten tighter, things are more interesting to watch, I think, when the matchups are closer, even though some teams have had some injuries here. Yeah, we'll see how some of the teams who've had some significant injuries, most notably, I would say 10 XL entries right now. Perhaps Mighty Midgets. We'll see how long Matt Ryan will be out. He's been carrying the load. Definitely one of your load bearers for the Mighty Midgets this year. So he's been over 50 or so pretty much every single week. And you are going with Carr, I believe, is your bench quarterback. We'll see if you make any moves. I don't really know if there's anybody really much better, any better choices on the waiver wire there for you. But yeah, that could be a difference here for Mighty Midgets in the next few weeks going forward. So he's vulnerable. That's always a plus. But for everything else, yeah, hopefully, I hope that no one suffers any significant injuries, and we get through this week with a lot of good matchups here. So, all right, guys, I see I've somehow cracked over the 1 hour mark, so we will tie up this one for the week. Yeah, good luck to everyone this week. Thanks for watching, listening, or whatever it is you do. Assuming very few people ever make it this far into the review anyway. So yeah, thank you for that, and we will see you back here next week for Week 8 review. All right, guys, thank you, and see you next week.